starting with Minimum Wages Act. What we have studied in Minimum Wages Act, students, I have taught you Minimum Wages Act in 1948, I guess, right? When it comes to Minimum Wages Act, this enactment has been passed in order to make sure that whatever the market condition India is having since independence, even now, we are having huge population and we are having huge workforce. I told you yesterday only more than 500 million employees are working over here in India, out of which 90% workforce is an unskilled workforce, right? An unskilled workforce, when it comes to matter of policy, how much wages is to be paid, if it would be given to the organization or to the entrepreneur or to the management of the establishment, what they will do, they'll curtail the wages, right? They'll cut out the wages. They just wanted to pay the bare minimum possible wages that they can pay to the workers working within the establishment, because they are here to cutting the cost and increase the revenue for the establishment, right? But in that situation, who is going to be economically, physically and mentally exploited? That would be the workman, right? What kind of environment can you think that a worker not getting a sufficient payment will use his proper productivity? Answer would be no, right? He would try to procrastinate the work. He would try to not to do work properly, not to do sufficient work, and ultimately it will lead to economic loss to the establishment as well, right? And to the economy as well. So there is a need and necessity to interfere, right, in the policy of the establishment, that we are not giving you a convenience, we are not giving you any right to determine your own wages, right? Let it determined by the state government, right? Let it determined by the state government. You have to pay the bare minimum wages to each and every worker working within the establishment. We are not going to provide you with any flexibility of giving any kind of excuse. Oh, I'm into loss, I'm not having sufficient resources, how you can expect me to pay the wages or that bare minimum wages if I myself is suffering losses. No excuses will be taken care of. Every time you have to pay the bare minimum wages determined by your state government, whether you are in profit or you are in loss. So that will make sure that there would be no exploitation of the workers, right? And the human resources of the country can be utilized in an efficient manner, right? Right, students? Now India is running behind, first of all, the uniform wage minimum wage rate for the entire nation through the new wage code, right? In new wage code, they are planning to come out with a bare minimum and uniform wage rate for the entire nation. Earlier, the flexibility to determine the wage rate lies only with the state government, but now it is going to be shifted on the central government, right? Although it has not been implemented yet, but once it will be implemented, we are going to see the uniform minimum wage for the entire nation, right? Right, students? And later on, the government is planning to shift to the living wage, not because government is willing to get it done, because ILO is pressurizing the government, right? That in all the developed nation now, the workers are not only getting the bare minimum wages, they are even getting the living wage, which is not just covering their food, shelter and clothes, even it is covering their education and healthcare expenses as well, right? So in order to, can I say that, in order to improve the quality of the life of the workers, it is really required, or the need of the hour, that shift from bare minimum wages to living wage. And it is the planning of the government that it is going to be implemented by 2025, that is next year, right? Next year, next financial year, right? Right, students? And we have gone through with some other thing as well. Yeah, we have gone through with the definition of appropriate government. In appropriate government, we got to know that if you just wanted to become perfect in any law or any legislation, you should go through along with the act with the rules, right? If you are willing to become expert in company law, what you have to do? Companies Act 2013, read with rules made under Companies Act 2013 by central government. read with regulation made by Reserve Bank of India or Security Exchange Board of India under Companies Act 2013, along with all circular notifications issued by Ministry of Corporate Affairs, right? Right, students? So multiple documents you have to go through with if you want to become perfect in any law. So in the same way, if you are willing to become perfect in Minimum Wages Act, what you have to do, you have to refer the rules that has been made by the appropriate government, right? So appropriate government is nothing more than the government who is going to fill the blanks, right? Fill the blanks which has been written as prescribed in the law, right? Whenever a law is carrying the term prescribed, means there is something that need to be added on by the appropriate government, right? So every prescribed is going to be replaced by whom? The appropriate government, right? Right, students? And in appropriate government for 4 industries, I guess, for all corporation owned by the central or state central government, for all the railway administration, for oil field, and for mines, the appropriate government will be the central government, otherwise for other matters state government. So for these 4 things you will get a uniform minimum wage law for every entity belonging to this category, right? And for others it varies from state to state, right? Right, students? And then we have gone through with one more definition, that was, I think, employee. When it comes to employee, employee includes all kinds of employees, whether they are performing manual work, clerical work, skilled work, unskilled work, who has been appointed to perform the scheduled employment. Scheduled employment means an employment that has been provided under schedule to this act, right? Who has been appointed, but it does not include, I think, apprentice, right? It does not include apprentice or any other worker who has been appointed to perform the non-scheduled employment, right? Even it includes out worker. If you are providing work to any person who is getting the work done from home, and giving it back to you, like a boutique or so many organizations are providing gig workers, right? Even they would come under the definition of employee under this enactment, and they'll be eligible for minimum wage rate, right? Minimum wage rate. And any worker who is working with the union armed force would not come under the definition of worker over here, right? So those who would come under the definition of worker will be eligible for minimum wage. Those who would not be eligible, not being covered under the definition of worker, would not be eligible for the minimum wage, right? Right, students? Is it clear? I have gone through with, I think, 2014 May, even Karnataka government has replaced their minimum wage rules. Now in Karnataka, specifically in Bengaluru, the minimum wage rate is 18,900 something for the skilled workers, okay? Worker who are being classified as a skilled worker. In April 2024, they have came up with the new rules. The minimum wage that need to be paid to the skilled worker would be 18,900 rupees from this financial year, and for unskilled worker it is around 15,200 rupees. So they have even replaced their minimum wage provision, and they have included just 2 things in minimum wage. The first one is basic wage and the second one is dearness allowance. So even the definition of wages varies from state to state. They have just included 2 things, basic pay plus dearness allowance, where the value of the dearness allowance is around 3,800 rupees, including that 18,900 mein what is being included, 3,800 rupees dearness allowance has been included, and dearness allowance is uniform for all category of worker, whether you are skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, it doesn't matter. Got my point, students? Is it clear? So should we proceed further? Should we proceed? So now starting with what, beta? The definition of employer. What I'm starting with is definition of employer. Okay, students, I'm starting with definition of employer. Online students, interact if you are having any doubt, or if you are not having any doubt, even interact through messages about your learning. Okay, so starting with what, beta? Employer. Can you tell me the relevance of the definition of employer? What would be the relevance of the definition of employer over here, beta? Why they are defining the term employer? Why they are defining the term employer? Employer is going to be defined in every labor laws, right? And even employee is going to be defined in every labor laws, right? Even salary and wages is going to be defined in every labor laws, right? Right, student, until and unless they are having uniform meanings, and they do not have any uniform meaning. Everywhere you are going to get something different when it comes to these three definitions. Okay, so now they are defining the term employer. Can I say that employer in labor law is nothing more than officer in default? Can I say that under Companies Act 2013, the term officer in default is being defined in section 2 subsection 60, which means and includes what? Any person who is responsible for the commitment of offense, right? Or commitment of anything wrong, right? So here the employer means what? The person who is responsible for the contravention of this law, right? Right, students, who would be the employer? So whenever, if they would ask the definition of employer, can you write this one line? The person who is ultimately responsible for the compliance of Minimum Wages Act 1948, right, will be classified as what, beta? Employer. Got my point, students? Now what they are saying, they are saying that any person who employs others directly or indirectly. I told you there are two methods of appointment of a person. Either you can directly appoint him or you can appoint him through contractor, right? So even if you are appointing a person through contractor, you will come under the definition of employer, right? Because you have appointed him through contractor indirectly, right? Now they are saying that in case of factory, it would be the factory manager, same, right? In case of governmentally controlled department, it would be the person assigned for the function of an employer, if not assigned, the head of that department, right? In case of local authority, the CEO of that local authority, right? In case of other cases, who would be the employer? Any person who is having ultimate control over the affairs of the organization, right? Right, students? In case of contractor, the person who has been appointed by the contractor to pay the wages will come under the definition of what, beta? Employer. If the contractor has not assigned him, primary duty to pay would lies with the contractor, otherwise on the employer. Yesterday we have studied one case law where it has been clearly written, not a news, right, where the court has come out with a direct notice that if the contractor failed to pay the wages, it is the duty of the employer to make the payment of the wages on time, right? Right, students, is it clear? Now they are saying that if a payment of minimum wages act is being applicable on an establishment, it doesn't matter, it would not be applicable on the branch of that establishment if that branch is not appointing any person for scheduled employment. So suppose I am having two places. I am a construction contractor, and when it comes to construction worker, minimum wage act will be applicable, right? But I am having few other person who is taking care of the marketing of my project, and they are sitting at my office, okay? So for my construction site, I would be an employer because I am hiring the people for scheduled employment, right? Right, students, right? But for the person to whom I am appointing for marketing, they are not performing which kind of activities with a scheduled employment. So for them, I am not employer. Got my point, students? So, got my point? Yes, please.
Sir, I feel you're very fast, sir.
I am fast
Yeah,
today.
because
Actually, I am just revising now. Earlier, I was just revising it. Okay. Now I am coming to the new topics, right? So now I'm going slow, right? With employer, am I slow? It's same topic, no? Yesterday we have studied. Okay, I'll reduce my pace now. So what is employer? Tell me, what do you mean by employer, beta? What is employer? Tell me the meaning of employer, the crux of employer that you have understood.
any person who is responsible
For the payment of minimum wage, right? Any person who is responsible for payment of minimum wage. Point number one clear. Now the term is being defined in section 2, right? Who would be the employer over here? If it is a factory, the manager of the factory will be classified as an employer. So if tomorrow there would be any default in payment of minimum wage, to whom you are going to make responsible, to whom the responsibility will be imposed? that is manager in case of factory, right? Manager in case of factory. If the department belongs to the government, then the person who has been assigned as an employer, if no person has been assigned in that case, the head of the department, right? The third thing is what, beta? If the establishment is a local authority, municipal corporation, the CEO of that corporation will be classified as an employer. The next one is, in other cases, any person who is having ultimate control of the affairs of the establishment, right? Right, students? So I think the same definition was there, right? Same definition was there. I think local authority was not there, but it's very clear. Now, do you think that institute is going to ask you the definition of employer? I guess institute even would understand that this is a very basic question, right? Right, students? So when it comes to employer, now further proceeding, if even you would come under the definition of employer if you have not hired the services of a person directly, right? If you have hired the services of the person indirectly through contractor, even in that case you can come under the definition of what, beta? Employer, because worker are working for you, not for the contractor, right? Right, student? But if the contractor has already assigned a person responsible for payment of wages, that person would come under the definition of employer. Otherwise, if he will make default, ultimately you will be coming under the definition of employer. Now, can a single person be an employer and not an employer owning an establishment? Answer would be yes. Now, this is the point. See, if I am having an organization and I have made different departments of that organization, okay, I am having my construction site located in different locations over there in Mumbai, and my head office is there in Thane, okay. Now I am hiring the services of few employees who are performing marketing tasks for my upcoming projects, and marketing task would not come under the definition of scheduled employment, okay. So all workers working in my marketing branch, right, for them I would not come under the definition of employer because they are not performing which kind of task, beta? Scheduled employment, right? But if they are working in construction site, for them I am what? An employer. Got my point? Is it clear, beta? Is it clear? You tell me what is being clear to you. Tell me. The last point that I have explained, tell me what I have explained.
Sir, for I am the employer for the workers and not for the marketing employers. I'm not the employer for them. I'm employer for the workers in the construction field.
Who has hired the construction worker? You, right? You have hired the construction worker, right? Who have hired the services of marketing worker, beta? You only, right? The construction site belongs to you, the marketing division belongs to you, right? For construction site, you have appointed whom? The construction worker. Which kind of task they are performing, beta? Scheduled employer. For them, who you are? An employer, and you are responsible to make the payment of minimum wage to them, right? But does any minimum wage you need to pay to the marketing worker? Because marketing is not come under the definition of scheduled employment. So you need not to pay any minimum wage to them, right? So you are not an employer for them for paying the minimum wage. Got my point? Is it clear, students? So what I am teaching you is the definition of what? Employer. Is it clear now? Is it clear? Now proceeding further. Now they are saying that what is scheduled employment? So what is scheduled employment, beta? Scheduled employment is nothing more than the employment that has been written in schedule to this act, right? Where it has been written in the schedule to this act. Now there is only one schedule because it is a small piece of legislation, right? Why it is in a small piece of legislation? Because rule making power is there with the state government. So state government is going to define everything, right? It is just providing the basic framework of the entire minimum wage law, right? So they are saying that there are two parts or two sections of this schedule. How many sections are there in the schedule? Two sections are there. For section 1, there are originally only 12 entries that has been made by the central government, that only 12 employment will be classified as a scheduled employment. Okay, that is section 1. Okay, for section 2, all agriculture based employment would be classified in section 2. For section 2, got my point, students? The entire schedule is being divided into how many sections? 2 sections, right? Section 1 is what? Non-agriculture related activities, right? And section 2 is what? Agriculture related activities, right? And we know that Parliament has made the basic framework of this law through this schedule. We can clearly say that these schedules can be changed by the government, right? By making rules, right? Right, students? Government would be authorized to change these schedules. They can make entries in the schedules, right? There is no problem on making entries, but they have to follow the prescribed procedure, right? So can I say that this schedule is going to be vary from state to state, right? Right? But from the point of view of central, there are 12 entry in section 1 and agriculture related employment will be provided in section 2, right? Now why they have defined it in different section, I am telling you the reason. Now they are saying that if any employment would come under section 1, what? If any employment would come under section 1, you have to define minimum wage for the entire state for any employment provided in section 1. Pehla point clear hua? You got my point? So what they are saying, if now agriculture related employment would come under section 2, right? Non-agriculture related employment would come under section 1. So if a state government is determining minimum wage for any employment laid down in section 1, so can I say that construction contract would come under section 1, right? So if you are defining minimum wage for construction contracts, you have to determine the minimum wage for the entire state. Every part of the state you have to define what beta? The minimum wage for construction workers. Got my point, students? Although for every area, it can be for zone 1, it can be different. For zone 2, it can be different. For zone 3, it can be different. But you have to define the minimum wage for the entire state. Got my point? But for agriculture, that is section 2, for section 2, there is no need to define minimum wage for the entire state. Okay? You may choose certain part of the state where the agriculture work is going on and other part may be left out. Got my point? Is it clear? That is why they have defined it in sections or divided it into sections. Got my point, students? Is it clear? So what is schedule? Schedule is nothing more than an addendum attached with this enactment, right? Originally, the schedule was divided into 2 sections. Section 1 is what? Non-agriculture activity. Section 2 is what? Agriculture. Do the schedule is amendable? Answer would be yes. You can amend it, right? Who can amend it? The state government or the appropriate government, right? By following the procedure laid down in this enactment, right? For section 1 nature employment, so what you have to do is you have to define the minimum wage for the entire state, right? But for section 2, that is called agriculture related section, right? You may define the minimum wage for the part of the state. You need not to cover the entire state. Can minimum wage vary from one part of the state and another part of state? Answer would be yes. You may keep it different, right? Based on the inflation, based on the cost of living index, right? It may vary, but you have to define it for the entire state if the employment comes under section 1. Got my point, students? Is it clear? Today I have finished 2 things. The first one is definition of employer. The ultimate crux of the employer is the person who would come under the definition of employer would be ultimately responsible to make the payment of minimum wage. If he would not pay, he would be behind the bar, right? The second one is the schedule. Schedule is essentially required just to understand the concept that entire schedule is being divided into 2 parts, agriculture activities and non-agriculture activities. For non-agriculture activity, define the minimum wage for the entire state. For agriculture activity, define the minimum wage for a part of the state. Is it clear? And we can understand when it comes to Maharashtra, do you think that so much agriculture will be going on in Mumbai? Answer would be no. It would be generally being taken care in non-urban area, rural areas, right? Right, students? So for agriculture sector, you may define for certain part. For non-agriculture sector, you may define it for the entire state. Is it clear? Got my point? Everything is clear? Everything is clear, beta. Now they are defining what wages. What they are defining, beta? Now they are saying that when it comes to wages, now tell me when it comes to wages, whatever is going to be included in the definition of wages would be classified as a minimum wage, right? Would be classified as what, beta? Minimum wage. Although for the four industries, wage remains uniform throughout the nation, right? Which all industries? Mines, oil field, right? Railways, and for but for other states it may vary from state to state, right? Generally wage includes what, beta? They are saying that wage includes all the employment term related payments, means whatever is being term based payment. What is term based payment, beta? The payment that has been made based on the employment contract, right? So whatever contractual payment that has been made in cash to the employee would come under the definition of what, beta? It would come under the definition of wages, right? Plus it includes HRA, house rent allowance, right? It includes what, beta? House rent allowance. Is it clear? So if dearness allowance is being paid as a part or terms of wage, even it would come under the definition of what, beta? Wages. Is it clear? So basically we should only focus on what, beta? Inclusions, right? We should not focus on what? Exclusions, right? Inclusion includes what? The first one is basic pay, right? The second one is what? The term payments, which even includes what? HRA, right? Right, students? Is it clear? Yesterday, if you can remember, when it comes to wages, wages the definition includes everything, even it includes overtime pay, even it includes bonus payments, if it is the terms of the contract, right? Right, students? I taught you this section 3 subsection 1, right? That schedule 1, schedule 2 employment, right? For part 1 employment, you have to define what the wages for the entire state, and for part 2 you can define the minimum wage for the part of the state, and other part may be left out, right? Right, students? Now one more thing they are saying, that although if an employment is a scheduled employment, if an employment is a scheduled employment, focus, okay? So if the number of employee in that scheduled employment within the state is less than 1,000, means you are having bare minimum people employed in that category of activities, okay? You need not to define any minimum wage in that case. Is it clear? State is under no obligation if the number of employee working in the scheduled employment in that state is up to 1,000, right? Less than 1,000, right? Then you need not to define what? Minimum wage, even though if it is a scheduled employment. Is it clear? Because not a significant segment of public is being affected because of that, right? Only in the entire state number of workers working in that employment is less than 1,000. So no larger public interest is involved. So no need to bother about their minimum wage. Is it clear? Let the employer determine it on its own convenience. Is it clear? Got my point, students? Is it clear? Now they are saying that minimum wage need to be revised every 5 years. Minimum revision period would be what, beta? 5 years. Every 5 years it need to be revised. Got my point, students? Is it clear? Which section we have done is section 3. Actually, I am just adding some more things over here in notes. That is why I am giving you chapter wise. Okay. Today even I think you got the summary notes of previous chapter as well. Is it good? Have you checked? Check it. Check it and let me know. Clear to everyone? Clear to everyone? What would be the implication of minimum wages act? whatever is being explained in the class on an establishment. As an owner of establishment, what all factors you will consider? Anyone can.
The type of industry which you're working, the type of industry.
Because the nature of industry will determine that how much wages you have to pay to the worker, right? The nature of the work that has been, conducted in your establishment, right? The next one,
Number of employees.
you need to have a clear idea that you have to make the minimum wage payment. If you will not pay the minimum wage, it is a subject matter of punishment, not a penalty, right? Right, students? Second, you need to know that the minimum wage is going to be differ from state to state. So you need to have clear idea that what new wage rate is being applicable in your state. Like in Bengaluru now, every employer has to pay 19,000 per month to the worker who are skilled worker, right? So earlier if they were paying 15,000, they need to get to know about the new rates, otherwise they would be subject matter of imprisonment, right? So every organization in Bengaluru has to revise their wage rates, right? According to the new norms, right? And this must be communicated by whom? To the HR department by the consultants, right? That now you have to get it revised, otherwise you and your employer would be in legal trouble, right? Right, students? Next. So tell me the next thing, if the concerned person is involved in agriculture sector, right? Means if he is having a farmhouse and he is appointing people working over there, right? I would suggest him, there may be a minimum wage or there may not be a minimum wage for your locality or area, right?
Yes.
Right, students? But if it is non-agriculture employment you are offering to the people, there would be a definite minimum wage rate. If the worker involved in that concerned activities are 1,000 or more than 1,000, right? Then there would be definitely a minimum wage rate applicable to you. Is that clear? So only 4 or 5 things we got very clarity about. The first one is what? You have to pay the minimum wage. If you will not pay, it is a subject matter of imprisonment. You have to pay even if you are having a loss. Loss cannot be an excuse, right? The third thing is, who is responsible to make the payment of wage is the employer. To whom the minimum wage need to be paid? To worker, including out worker, right? If you're offering work and saying that please get it done at your place, you need not to come to office, still minimum wage will be applicable. You would not become perfect in minimum wage by reading this law. You have to go through with the state rules, right? Right? State is going to define the term, the value of the minimum wage, right? A state is being provided with a flexibility. If it is a non-agriculture sector, then they have to define the minimum wage for the entire state. If it is agriculture, they have to define the minimum wage for a particular locality, right? Even if an employment is a scheduled employment, there may be a scene where no minimum wage has been defined by the government, right? If the worker working in that class of work is less than 1,000, right, students? The crux is this much only, right? Other than that, everything is you are preparing for writing the answer, right? Otherwise, crux is this much only, right? Is it clear, students? Now, what would be the criteria of defining the minimum wage? Now, they are saying, section 3, they are saying that the minimum wage can be a minimum time rate, that is per hour payment, right? Or 8-hour working payment, or 48 hours a week working payment, right? It may be based on time rate, right? It may be based on piece rate, okay? It may be defined in terms of piece rate, that whatever quantity of work you will do, you are going to get the payment accordingly, right? It may be a guaranteed time rate. Guaranteed time rate means it doesn't matter how many hours you will work, you will get minimum this time ka wages. Is it clear? It is over. What would be the overtime rate? Generally, under Indian law, overtime rate is double. Double the original rate, right? What is overtime, beta? Over here in India, 48 hours a week is the normal working hours. So any work that has been done more than 48 hours will be classified as what, beta? Additional or overtime work. Even if you are working on holidays, if Sunday you are working, it would be counted as an overtime. Got my point, students? Is it clear? So now section 3 states that state government is being provided with the flexibility. They may define the minimum time rate, they may define the minimum piece rate, they may define the guaranteed time rate, right? right students, and they may define what? Overtime. But if overtime rate is not being defined, it will be taken as a double the basic rate, right students. You may define the minimum wage rate for different jobs, right, for different work groups, right, for different locations. Means it may differ from nature of work to nature of work, it may differ from place to place, it may differ from nature of work to nature of work, right. Wage period can be hourly, it can be daily, monthly, or other periods, right. But here they have written other periods, but that other period should be not more than 1 month, right. Done. Is it clear? Manageable, students? Manageable. Now they are saying in section 4, section 4 what they are saying? They are saying that who is going to define the minimum wage is the state government. So state government is being provided with 3 formats in which they can determine the minimum wage rate. First, they may define the minimum wage as a basic pay plus DA, dearness allowance. Okay, basic pay plus DA means minimum wage will be classified as a basic pay plus DA. I told you very clearly in the beginning of the lecture that Karnataka government has come out with minimum wage rate, and they have defined the minimum wage as basic pay plus DA, right, cost of living index ke basis pe cost of living allowance, right students. So first format of defining the minimum wage can be basic pay plus DA. Is it clear? Second method of defining the minimum wage can be basic pay plus food concessions. If the organization is offering any concessional food or concessional services or concessional rent on property, even that minimum wage can be defined as a basic pay plus concessions. Is it clear? Or third thing, you can define the minimum wage as a single rate with no bifurcation. You got my point, students? What is section 4? Section 4 is saying that you are getting my point, beta. Section 4 is saying what? It is saying that state government, you want to define the minimum wage now. You can define minimum wage as basic pay plus cost of living allowance, right? You can either define it as a basic pay plus food concessions, right, or other concessions, or you can define it as a single rate with no bifurcation. It is being clearly stated that you have to pay this much by whatever name you want to pay, but you have to pay this much with no allowances added on it, right students. Is it clear?
Yes.
Repeat whatever I have explained in section 4 if you got the point.
Generally, it includes the basic pay plus the dearness allowance.
What is section 4, beta?
It defines like.
Don't talk. What is section 4?
It defines that what is the minimum wage that is to be paid by the rules of the certain state government. Extended, we have to look into that. And generally, it includes the basic pay plus the dearness allowance. And in such allowances, if the organization or the establishment provides you such stay or any such thing, that
You did not get the point. Anybody got the point? Tell me.
So it can be minimum wages can be classified into 3, which is like the basic rate plus cost of living.
You did not get the point. Anyone else want to try? Yeah.
The rules are made by the state. So the state government may decide on what basis the minimum wage will be fixed. So there are 3 types. There are 3 ways on which the minimum wage can be fixed. First is basic pay plus dearness allowance.
Means the employer will have a flexibility that he can divide the minimum wage into basic pay plus DA, and he can give it to you like Karnataka government has done, that you have to pay 18,900 to employee, out of which 3,800 should be what, beta? 3,800 should be DA. Then a remaining part would be what? The basic pay. Is it clear? So if the state government is willing to define the minimum wage, they can define the minimum wage, right, as a straightforward rate with no inclusion and exclusion, right? They can say that your minimum wage would be the basic pay, right? or they can define it as a basic pay plus DA, right? Or they can define it as a basic pay plus concession. Is it clear? So this much flexibility has been provided to whom? The state government, that they can divide the minimum wage into these three categories. Is it clear? Does it make any sense? Yes, it makes sense for the state government, not for the employer, right? Ultimately, employer has to pay what, beta? Minimum wage. Whether it may be divided into basic pay plus DA, or it may be divided into basic pay plus HRA, or it is being divided into basic pay plus concessions, or it is a straightforward rate, right? Ultimately, what you have to do, you have to make the payment, right? Just one more flexibility will be given to the employer. If your minimum wage rate defined by the state government includes basic pay plus concession, you would have a flexibility that part of wage can be paid in the form of concessions, right? You need not to pay the cash for the same, right, students? Is it clear? Got my point? Got my point? How many sections we have done? Yes, please.
Could you please repeat the?
See, if the state government has defined that, Rahul, you have to pay to all the skilled worker 19,000 per month in any situation, and you can pay it in the form of basic pay or food concessions. So what I can do, I can pay 10,000 as a basic pay, and remaining 9,000 I can put it as a food concession, that whatever food you are eating from my canteen, you are going to get 30% concession on that. So that 30% I would pay in the form of that 9,000. Is it clear? Right, students? I told you very clearly, we are just trying to crack the concept behind the provision, right? Right, students? So how many sections we have done? 4 sections. 1 is applicability, 2 is definition, 3 is how to determine the minimum wage and all, right? And 4 is how the minimum wage would be computed or determined by the state government, right? Right, students? Go and read it once, then we'll proceed further. Okay? What is concessions? I have defined. Okay. What is cost of living index? I have defined. Okay. I think generally all state government would define the minimum wage as basic pay plus DA, because DA is a subject matter of annual adjustments, right? If they would define it as a one single rate, that basic pay, then it is going to be revised by after 5 years, right? Right? And don't you think that every year some element of the wage should be revised based on inflation rate going on, right? So it's always better to define the minimum wage as basic pay plus cost of living allowance, right? Right, students? Is it clear? So what you have understood till now, tell me, what is minimum wage act? That you have to pay, otherwise you would be behind the bar, right? You should have clear idea about the minimum wage rate that has been applicable for your work at your state, right? So you need to be well versed with the state ruling, right? If you're not well versed about the updates related with minimum wage, you would be in a big legal trouble, right? And the trouble or the consequence would be imprisonment. It is not merely the fine, right? So you have to keep your policies updated according to the minimum wage rate applicable upon you, right? If you are from the agriculture activities, if you are into farming or you are into horticulture or some other activities, in that situation, no worries. There may be a situation when the minimum wage rate is not being applicable at your area, right? But for other category of employment, there would be definitely a settled minimum wage rate, although it may vary from location to location. So if you are having multiple branch, don't you take it like that if you are paying 19,000 per month to the employee working in Bengaluru and you are paying the same amount to the employee working in another branch, it would work out. No, for every location there may be a different minimum wage rate, right? So you have to first check out that in which location your branch is being located, right? Based on that, you have to determine the minimum wage rate, right? Even if you are having branch within the same state, there may be a variation in the minimum wage rate, right? Suppose some person is working in Nagpur, is getting 15,000 per month as a skilled labor. So I thought like I am opening a branch in Mumbai and I am going to pay same 15,000 to the employee working in Mumbai, and I am taking it like I am a well compliant person and making payment of minimum wage. Will it be applicable like that, beta? Answer would be no. For Mumbai, there may be a different wage rate, right? Right, got my point, students? Is it clear? It varies from zone to zone, right, beta? So if worker working, although he is working with DMart only, DMart is being owned by one single company, right? Super Avenues Markets Limited, right? So what they are doing, they are having multiple branches in different locations. So for each branch employee, there may be a variation in salaries, right? Because those who are working in Nagpur will get lesser salary or minimum wage than one who is working in Mumbai, right? Right, students? So I have to explain that see, you cannot follow the uniform wage rate for all the worker working in your organization. It will differ from location to location. Got my point, students? Is it clear? And the minimum wage you can pay in the form of basic pay plus DA. You can pay it as a basic pay plus concessions, or you can pay it as a uniform rate. It totally depends upon your state government, right? Is it clear, students? An out worker is also eligible for minimum wage, right? Now, math procedure for fixing the or revising the minimum wage. So they are saying, beta, there are two methods of determining the minimum wage rate. Have you ever heard about the bottom up approach and top down approach? What is top down approach?
There are class.
Done, students? What do you have understood till now related with minimum wage act? Tell me. Why the minimum wage act has been passed? Why it's been passed? Why it's been passed, students?
To protect the interests of the employees.
The workers, right? To make sure that human resources of this nation should be utilized in a proper manner, right? Next. What kind of obligation it is being created over the employers?
To make the minimum wage.
What?
Obligation is to pay the minimum wage.
Minimum wage as per
Minimum wage.
state rules, right? As per state rules. As per state rules, and the state rules varies from state to state, nature of work to nature of work, location to location, right? Category of worker to category of worker. There may be a different wage rate for skilled, there may be a different wage rate for unskilled. There may be a different wage rate for the same organization located in different locations, right? There may be a different wage rate based on nature of work, right? If an organization has appointed three category of different workers, rate may differ from worker to worker as well, right? Right, students? So you have to keep updated, keep yourself updated about all the state notifications, about all the state resolutions in terms of what beta minimum wage act, right? There would be two method of determining the minimum wage rate, right? Where the government can adopt for a top-down approach, in which the government will form the committee will determine the wage rate, although it would be through participation, right? Definitely it would be through participation, but no direct involvement of every person will be involved in it, right? They'll frame the committee will advise the wage rate. Based on the advisory of the committee, they'll determine the minimum wage rate, and it would become official after the official gazette has been published. Even it can be revised from the back date, right? So even you need not to know just only about the revision of minimum wage rate, right? You have to be clear about whether it is being revised from prospective effect or retrospective effect. If it is being implemented from retrospective effect, you have to make additional payment to all your employees to make sure the compliance of this law, right? Right, students? Is it clear? So it can be implemented through retrospective effect. The second method of determining the minimum wage would be what, beta? Notification method, in which the government will adopt extreme bottom-up approach, right? Extreme bottom-up approach, in which Any person, even being a company secretary of my company, can I make a representation with the government? Yes, because my opinion matters for them, right? They are asking for my opinion, they are asking for opinion of all affected persons, right? Can a trade union make representation? Yes, a trade union can also make representation because they are having vested interest in it, right? If the representation need to be made, it need to be made within how many months? Within 2 months, right? Once all the representation has been sorted out, they'll come up with the final rate, right? The final rate would become effective from the date of notification or 3 months after expiry of the same, right? Right, students? Is it clear? Now, advisory board and central advisory board, you guys will explain me the concept of advisory boards. Okay, go through once and let me know what is advisory board. But a retrospective effect means backdate say, means the wage rate that has been implemented, the wage rate that has been defined by the government in 2024 is going to be applicable from the back years. It may be from 2022, 2023 or 2021. So if it would become implemented from the back date, what you have to do, you have to make the payment of minimum wage from the effective date. Got my point? Retrospective effect, Pavitra. Done, students? Gone through with the concept, that is section 7 and section 8. Can you help me out with the difference between, just I am trying to check what kind of reading skills you guys are having. There are advisory board, there are central advisory board, there are committees, right? Right, students? You guys have gone through with 3 different concepts over here. One is committees, the another one is advisory board, the third one is central advisory board, right? Right? Can you help me out with the difference between committee and advisory boards? Can you help me out, beta?
Advises the committee
Hmm.
to coordinate to coordinate the committee, the advice.
Nice try. Can I say that, beta, when it comes to committees, they are purpose oriented. Can I say that? Their purpose, when there is a need to revise the minimum wage rate, है ना, then only the committee will be formed. Can I say that? Right? When the committees will be formed, beta, when there is a need and a necessity to revise the minimum wage rate. Right? Otherwise, will you make committees? No. And do you think that those who are sitting on the chair in the cabinet are having knowledge of labor laws or knowledge of any laws? Answer would be no, right? They are being guided by whom, beta? Those who are literate, right? Those who are dealing with those matters. So these advisory boards are nothing more than the specialized board that has been formed to consult the government, to guide the government that there is a need and necessity to revise the minimum wage rate. Got my point, students? So the role of advisory board would, can I say that committees are temporary in nature, advisory boards are permanent in nature. Can I say that? Committees will be formed only when there is a need and necessity to revise a minimum wage, right? Whereas advisory board is a permanent institution made by the state government, that is called state advisory board under section 7, and central advisory board by the central government, right? Right? When there is a need and necessity to revise the minimum wage, right? Who will guide the government that there is a need and necessity to revise the wage rate is the advisory board, right? Based on the opinion or advice of the advisory board, the government will form the committees. Got my point, students? Is it clear? Got my point? So committee is what? Purpose oriented, right? Yes, they are enough for exams. What is the basic difference between committees and advisory boards, beta? Committees are purpose oriented and they are being formed under section 5, right? Advisory boards are permanent institution formed under section 7 and section 8, right? Role of advisory board is to advise the government when and there is a need for revision of minimum wage, how the committee should be formed, right? Everything will be helped out by the advisory board. Whereas the committee will be working under the supervision and control of the advisory boards, right? Right, students? Committees are temporary in nature, advisory boards are permanent in nature, right? So can I say that even Karnataka government would have a permanent advisory board for Minimum Wages Act, right? Even Maharashtra government would have advisory board for Minimum Wages Act, right? Right? Or can I say that one more thing, logically, tell me, committee would be formed for a specific industry, right? Whereas advisory board will be created for the entire industries, right? Right, students? Varied industries, people belonging to different industries would be the part of advisory board, right? But people belonging to a particular industry would be the form part of committees, right? Right? If you're not getting it, tell me very clearly. Getting everything, beta? Here I have not written all these things in the notes, just I am trying to analyze the situation, right? They are not going to ask you the difference between advisory board and the committee, never. They haven't asked it, right? But you should have clear idea, right? A permanent institution is what? Advice. Why the advisory board is being constituted? Because government, the people who are handling the government is not well aware when there is a need and necessity to work on minimum wage, right? So this advisory board is nothing more than the permanent consultant of the government. If it belongs to state government, it is state advisory board under section 7. And if it is of central government, it is central advisory board. And even in advisory board, there would be one third, and one independent chairperson, right? Right? One third representative of employees, one third representative of employer, and one third of the governmental representative. And the last thing, the chair should be by the independent person. Is it clear? Again, can I say that role of advisory board is just advisory? They can advise the government, but the final judgment or final decision lies on the government. Government may deny to accept their advice or may accept the advice. Is it clear? Got my point, students? Got my point? Is it manageable? Should I give the break, beta? Is it required? Just give me a quick 4-5 points that has been learned in minimum wage. Then I'll proceed with the break. I'll give you a 10 minutes break now. Then 10 minutes after 1.5 lecture more. Okay? Now tell me what you have learned from Minimum Wage Act. Okay? You tell me, that girl with red top. Yeah. What's your understanding about minimum wage law?
Minimum Wage Act is introduced for the purpose of protect the interest of the employees.
Workers.
Workers. So it varies from state to state, place to place, and place to place, and industry to industry. Then
No need to purchase institutes material.
So government has introduced 3 different types of wages: bonus plus concession, bonus plus dearness allowance, and inclusive rates. When the government, whenever they want to revise the minimum wage, they form a committee, and the committee is coordinated by the advisory board. Advisory board is permanent for all states, and the committee is not permanent in nature.
But the formulation or the composition of both would be same, right? It would be same, but industry oriented would be the committee, common would be the advisory board. Next. Minimum wage rate need to be revised every 5 years, right? Go for a simple points, right? And the entire law is based on bottom-up approach, not on top-down approach. The government is not having any autocratic power where the government can impose any rate and you have to adopt that rate. The rate would always be taken up by consultative approach, right? Either it would be committee method or it would be notification. Under committee method, there would be an indirect involvement of the workers, right? In notification method, there would be a direct involvement of the worker. I am just trying, like, I am taking it, why you guys try to meet out my expectation. I am expecting you to understand the concept, not just we are revising with the section number. What is section 1? Applicability. Right. The section 2, section 3. What is section 3? Fixation of minimum wage. Section 4. Section 5. Section 6. Section 6 is committee method. Notification. 5 and 6 is notification method. Then 7. Advisory board. Advisory board is it, or state advisory board it is? It is advisory board or state advisory board? It is state advisory board, logically, right? If there are two different advisory board, can we say that the first one belongs to the state and union territory and the further one belongs to? But do you think that some kind of power has been given to the government only? Because all the boards that has been constituted over here, right, is being provided with only advisory role, not the mandatory role, right? That they have to follow the instruction given by the advisory board. Is it clear? Got my point, students? So today we will finish this, then we will proceed further with payment of bonus act, which is quite very technical. These two laws were very simple. Payment of bonus act is quite technical. Is it clear? So giving you 10 minutes break, then we will start the